Hello and welcome to Mighty Metal Mutt. My name is Chris Wilmore, and today is a great show because I've got some friends who are fellow fans of the hard rock heavy metal genre. And what we're going to do in this show is we're going to talk about our life. It's kind of like where's your life? This is your life. I think I'm trying to think of this is your life. And so we're going to kind of talk about where we came from, what got us into this genre of music, and how things are going right now. But before I do, I want to introduce each one of them. This is Robert Martin. He's a big heavy metal fan. And then, of course, to my right, I have Mark Anderson's also a big fan. So today's topic is sort of an introduction. I'm going to we're each going to give us sort of our lives about how we got into the genre. Fortunately, I'm going to edit this a little bit. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go and start. So the question is this: what got you into the genre of hard rock and heavy metal? And we're going to give you some key moments of that in the journey that got us engaged in the music. And everyone has a band. What is your band? And we're going to answer that question as well. And since I brought these people together, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I made sure to bring notes just in case I made any mistakes or anything like that. But my journey, I think, began in the year 1983. 1983 was a big year for music. That was when Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. And that was the music that got me into music in general, popular music. And I was all about Michael Jackson this, Michael Jackson that. It got to the point I didn't have any records or tapes or anything like that, so we had to listen to it on the radio. And you would, back in the days when you'd have to record the song off the radio. And so we would call my local station. I'm from Davenport, Iowa. So our local station, I think it was Kick 104, I think it was. And what would happen is they would always have every night the top 3 most requested songs. And Michael Jackson always won. It was either Beat It, Billie Jean, Thriller, always won. And parts 2 and 3 no one cared about. It was always Michael Jackson. But there was this one time that this one band beat Michael Jackson. I was like, who the hell is this person? Who are these people? It was a little known song called Jump by some band called Van Halen. And that was my first, my first foray into the heavy metal genre. And I know some people are like, that's not heavy metal, but whatever. That's my first hard rock genre was Van Halen. Didn't get me into Van Halen because I was still mad about them beating Michael Jackson and all that. But it opened my eyes a little bit. My brother bought the album and he listened to it to death. And so, of course, there's Jump, there's Panama. He, for some reason, really loved Drop Dead Legs, great song. Which I was just like, okay, I guess that's okay. Hot for Teacher, though, that was a good song. But like I said, I wasn't into the genre yet. And so time had to pass. And I heard like bands like Quiet Riot and Autograph. Right. You hear those songs, and I never really made a connection to hard rock. But then there was this one time when I heard this really awesome song called You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi. And I know a lot of people are going to laugh because like Bon Jovi's not heavy metal. They're like the most poser band, whatever. But that song made me buy the album Slippery When Wet. And I remember sitting down, I had tapes at that point, putting in the tape, listening to it. You Give Love a Bad Name, great song. And then I kept on listening. And then this one song that hadn't been released yet, Living on a Prayer, came on. And I was just like, dumbfounded how awesome it was at the time. And it was heavy but melodic. And it just got your fist thumping and all that. And from then on, that was my genre, was like pop rock, I guess you could say hard rock. And then later on, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 came out. Right. And the band and Dream Warriors by Dokken was on there. And that was my band, was Dokken. And my brother, it was funny because I remember the day that I bought the Dokken album, which was Back for the Attack. That was my first Dokken album, which was their 4th album. My brother bought Def Leppard Hysteria, and those 2 tapes got played to death from both of us. So that was my big coming into hard rock heavy metal genre. And since then, I mean, Dokken has been my band that I have followed. George Lynch is my favorite guitarist. Don Dokken, great singer, maybe not so much right now, but if he were to come and just belch, I would probably come and go see him. If he were just to belch the whole category, I'd probably go see him. Great band. I even went to see Foreigner just to see Jeff Pilson. Wow. That was the whole reason why I went to see the band, was just to see Jeff Pilson. And of course, he's the highlight. I mean, I don't know if you've seen him with Foreigner. Twice, yeah. He's like Superman. Just jumps around and flies and everything. So that is my foray into, that is my, my story in a nutshell. I'm going to go to Robert, if you don't mind, and you can tell us how did you get into it?
All right. Well, I was lucky enough, like many people, their parents may have been into different type of music that exposed them to certain genres. My father, when I was young, he had a really cool album collection, but he had a great 8-track collection. And so I just remember riding around in the car, and he would always be playing something good. And he played a lot of hard rock from the 60s and early 70s. And so it would be Led Zeppelin. Really, he was super into Grand Funk Railroad, Jethro Tull, Cream, bands like that. And so I had this introduction to a lot of hard rock already. And so I think as I got a little bit older into middle school, it was just a natural progression. AC/DC was gotten real popular around that time. And then eventually you start getting into things like Ozzy or Motley Crue. And at that point, it just hit. And coming out of the early 80s like you did, there was just so much good music. And the neat thing about that time is MTV, they weren't just locked into Michael Jackson. You did get to see Quiet Riot or all these different other bands and new wave bands on this 24-hour channel. And so you had exposure to everything. And at that time too, radio was just so popular with the different genres and the stations. So that was my introduction into metal, and it just stuck. I have a diverse taste in music, a lot like you do. I see your pictures. You also go to the musicals and things like that the way I do, but here we are, metalheads. That's always my first love, heavy metal.
Nice. My dad had a huge collection of diverse, anything from Elvis Presley to the Beatles to Santana. And so you hear that stuff going on. And then on my own, I'd get like the K-Tel albums that had like, a whole bunch of different songs, the pop stuff. And then one day, my best friend, Kevin, he came over, and this was, I think, in 77, 76, something like that. And he brought over Kiss Destroyer. There you go. And I had heard of Kiss, but didn't really know anything about it. And he put on side one with Detroit Rock City, where that car crashes, and and then it starts building up and just like cranks into the song. It's like, what the hell is this? And it was kind of a little frightening with that car crash. And we kept on playing King of the Nighttime World, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. So that kind of started my first branch of hard rock, because they're not really metal, more the hard rock. Yeah. And then I had another friend. He came to stay with us while they're moving from California to Colorado. He brought 3 tapes. He brought Hendrix smash hits. He brought Rush 2112 and Led Zeppelin. The song remains the same. So we listened to those for like 3 months, like rotated them over and over again. So Rush I was already a fan of, but then that got me into Rush going backwards from moving pictures. It just really opened my mind about that. And then Led Zeppelin, that was like, heard Dazed and Confused, that was my first long song. Well, it was 26 minutes on the live version. And all of a sudden, Zeppelin was it for me. That was like just a huge focus. Then going on the bus at school, this guy would put AC/DC in the back in black when it first came out. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of opened my eyes up to another part of rock. And that kind of threw up in those doors, and then went back in their catalog with Bond, because at that time it was with Brian Johnson. And the other one that's kind of really shaped the way I listen to music, I went to see Van Halen is in '88 on the Monsters of Rock tour. Mm-hmm. And Metallica opened up. I saw them at LA Coliseum. And I was towards the very back. Well, I was in the very back of the Coliseum. And when Metallica came on, everyone from the back started jumping off like onto the field. And there were cops that are like literally trying to get kids in, like you saw a lot of things that shouldn't happen there. And I was like, oh man, it's like the intensity of that music was like, oh, maybe I should really pay attention to this band. So I went out the next day and I think Injustice for All just came out, or was on the verge of, and that just blew the doors open for the harder, the real metal side, where I listened to Slayer and Megadeth, and then from that point on, I've gone even farther directions of the. So that's kind of where my mind kind of spider webbed out.
So that's your origin story there.
Yes,
Our
yes.
origin stories. Let me do some follow-up questions, see what you all think. And I was also thinking about did you stay for Dokken after Metallica was done?
Oh, I stayed for the whole show. We got there
Okay.
for Kingdom Come.
Were people booing Dokken at that point? Because I remember Dokken had a hard time. After
Yeah,
Metallica.
it was more quiet. I don't remember hearing boos, but I just remember I kind of went there for Dokken and also see Van Halen. And I came out a little disappointed because they were kind of just like they were at that breakup time. It was a little disappointing, but Scorpions blew like everyone away. That was the most impressive band. I was like, oh, I knew I liked them anyway, but seeing them live, that was totally different level.
That tour you were talking about, Monsters of Rock. Now, I don't know where y'all were, but people booing these bands, I don't know. In Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, that didn't happen. But there was the infamous show at the Cotton Bowl when Sammy lost his voice. And he promised to come back and they would do a free concert. And it took them a few years, but they finally did come back to Dallas and they played a free show.
At the West End, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. And that was the reason that happened. But yeah, that was just such a great lineup at that show. It was one of my first times to be up really close.
Oh, really?
And at the Cotton Bowl, and we worked our way up close. And I was just shocked because as we got up close to the Scorpions, of course, they had been around over 10 years, 12 years at that point. And they were older. They were all about 40, I guess. And you could see the wrinkles in their faces. And that was just shocking to us. We just didn't vision them being older, I guess.
Yeah, because you see on MTV, you don't see that part of them where they're definitely older than any of the other bands on that bill.
So question, when the 90s hit, grunge became the thing. And then the 2000s came, new metal, and our music that we like, we're old people, right?
Right.
Our music kind of fell by the wayside. What did you do during that time, during the 90s and the 2000s? Did you still continue following the genre, or did you progress? Because I know I'll say, for example, I kind of started following grunge, but I always checked out to see what my bands were doing from the 80s. And but grunge was the thing, Pearl Jam and all that. So,
well, I was bitter because of grunge. It took me a while to get into it and really appreciate it. And the fact that metal dropped off so quickly in the 90s the way it did. There were a few bands that still went out and had some big tours, but so many bands, they just couldn't do arenas anymore. And you had to go see them in smaller venues, which is nice. But at that time, it just seemed a little unusual. And so it took me a while to get into the grunge, but eventually I came around and I did really appreciate Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains and Nirvana and Pearl Jam, all those bands. But I stayed very loyal and followed my bands and kept buying the merchandise and kept going to the shows. And got a little worried about it at one point when bands quit touring as much, or you started to wonder, how long can they keep going out?
right.
I mean, there were bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden that they ended up playing Deep Ellum, very small venues in Dallas at that time in the 90s. And bands quit coming to Dallas for a little while, or it would just be very lightly attended, I think.
It's hard to imagine Iron Maiden in a small venue like that.
And they had Blaze at the time too, because
That's right.
Bruce had,
And it was the X Factor tour, which was a difficult sell with Bruce being gone. So that was a reason too. But then Judas Priest had Ripper, in the band, and so that was a little bit also another reason.
Yeah, definitely, because they played smaller venues too.
That's true.
So I moved from California to Austin in '94. So it's kind of right in the same era where grunge had already kind of popped up and was going pretty good. I was already a fan of Soundgarden before there was grunge, so that I was already there. Nirvana didn't really speak to me very much. I like Pearl Jam. I saw them while I was in Austin, and Soundgarden. Not Soundgarden. Alice in Chains. I happened to see them open for Van Halen when I was in California, and it was on the first tour, and that was, amazing. Seeing that. So that kind of, I was kind of immersed in that. When I moved to Austin, though, it was kind of what you were talking about. I saw Motley Crue at the Austin Music Hall, which was like a really small place, which was really cool. But in the '80s, they were playing like arenas. So I still stuck onto those bands as well. But being in Austin, I started getting into the blues a lot, and Clapton, and kind of found in like Allman Brothers and stuff like that. Just kind of like branched out in a different direction for a while because a lot of that music wasn't really speaking to me. So, and plus being in Austin, you get immersed in the blues really quick. So, I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, even though he had passed, but like other bands there that would. So I kind of went out in a little different direction for a while, but still, like, I went and saw Black Sabbath when I was there, and Kiss, and still had my hard rock metal connection.
Well, in the Dallas area, thankfully, we still had venues such as the Bronco Bowl. And so a lot of bands ended up going there. And it was, if you never got to go to the Bronco Bowl, it was just a great small venue that sat maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people in a mid-sized venue that we don't really have a lot of those around. It was either a club or an arena. And then to get to see some of those bands, because Iron Maiden played there, Megadeth played there, Motley Crue, Ozzy's retirement tour played the Bronco Bowl. And you would have thought that the retirement tour would have been Reunion Arena or someplace a lot bigger. The thing about grunge for me is when it came out, and I know it was aimed at a younger group coming up at that time, it just wasn't fun. And when you think about 80s metal, yeah, there's a lot of like aggression in it sometimes, especially if it's the thrash. Right. But there's so much fun involved with heavy metal music. And I didn't feel that with grunge. And it took me a long time to really appreciate what they were doing. And the vocals weren't, you didn't have as many impressive vocalists, I thought, in the same way, even though there's some great people like Chris Cornell and people out there. It was just a different type of vocal, and it took me so long to get used to that.
Yeah, and I totally understand where you're coming from. And it took me, like, I still this day, I'm not a big fan of Nirvana. A lot of it's because of vocals. It's just it's just kind of the same throughout. And I latched on to Alice in Chains after seeing them, which made a big difference, and just Soundgarden because I had that, but there had no stage presence. It was very flat. I mean, that's fine. That's what that was, but it wasn't like seeing Motley Crue or Def Leppard, where you have like the interaction with the crowd, and you have like the arena setting, whereas that fun factor was kind of not the same thing.
Now the one band, the one band that I really thought was fun and did have stage presence, and that was Stone Temple Pilots, because Scott Weiland was just an incredible frontman. And he was one of those guys that did get out there and dance and have fun, and he put on a show the way that you were used to.
That was exactly what I was going to say, because they were opening for Megadeth when I saw them the first time. I had never even heard of Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh, wow,
they're opening for Megadeth, and I wasn't even going to go to that concert, but I somehow got tickets for the day, and I was just like, okay, I'll go. And someone's like, you got to check out Stone Temple Pilots. I'm like, what's a Stone Temple Pilot,
Right.
And he comes out singing Cracker Man, I think. And he comes out with a megaphone, and he's like, and he goes, and he was just like all over. I'm just like, whoa, that song just caught me. And I was like, I immediately wanted to hear that song again. I don't remember any of the other songs, but that song just caught me. And I bought the tape the next day, and I'm like, this is a good band. And I even mentioned it in one of my videos, I know, like, it's kind of like when you think of the thrash bands, you have the big three, which was Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax. But some people think it's the big four because you have to add Slayer.
Right.
But I remember it was the big three before it was the big four, at least in my world. And so I kind of see grunge as the big four, maybe the big five. You have Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and then Stone Temple Pilots, if you count them.
I agree.
So when I heard Stone Temple Pilots, it was probably a year after grunge had become the big thing. But they were awesome. They were having fun. So it's kind of like they took both worlds and kind of turned it into a fun show.
Because they are a little different as far as like stage presence than the other bands. I think it's because they're from Southern California, because they're from San Diego, and they have that, they still have that connection to like the LA scene, where, up in Seattle it's just it's a little different there. So I think maybe that kind of like bled into their rock and roll veins to, be a little more theatric.
That's a good point.
Well, let me ask you this before we finish this video. I know as for a fact that all three of us still go to shows. We like to go to concerts. And the question sometimes comes up is, do people, should they hang it up? Because they always say, man, they're old. These are some old people and they don't sound as good as they did. What is your opinion on that? And who are some acts that are still cutting it for you? For me, I would say like some of the acts that I've seen recently is like when I saw Sammy Hagar doing his Best of All Worlds or what, Best of Both Worlds tour with Michael Anthony and Joe Satriani. That show blew me away, and he's like 150. He is old. But then you think of if you look at the other side of the coin, there's David Lee Roth, and you see video of him online, and he's like, he looks like an old man just trying to, like he looked like when my dad would try to dance, It doesn't quite look right. Yeah. But fortunately for him, he's got a good backup band. And so I always say this, like I follow Doc, and I understand that Don's voice has been shot, but like I said, if he's belching out the alphabet, I'll go see him just because, I appreciate his music and all that. So what do you think?
I say if you want to keep going out, you keep going out till you drop. And if people, and let's face it, online, there's a lot of hate online for bands that go out and still aren't in peak form. I get that. But if you have an audience that's out there and it's financially viable, I say keep going out. You only go around once. There's bands I'll see that I'm like, that wasn't as good as I remember. But there's still people out there, like you were saying, Hagar in his upper 70s, and there's other bands out there that still are bringing it and doing a great job. And so, yes, the Iron Maiden going out on their 50th anniversary tour.
Still have not seen them. I need to get tickets.
You have to go. You have to go. And this tour is going to be amazing. So I say keep going, and as long as there's people like me that will keep spending that money no matter what, then keep going out.
I agree. I saw, it was a few years ago, Rolling Stones at Cotton Bowl, and he had just turned 80. I mean, and he was running all over the stage. It's like, I think rock and roll keeps you young too. I saw Paul McCartney, I think it was the same year, and he was just turned 80 or 79, but still right in that. And he even said, "Hey, I'm not using backing tracks. I'm not messing with my voice at all. You get what you get." And I appreciated that. It's like, it's Paul McCartney. You can do what you want. I'll come to see you. Right. So, like you said, it's like, do it till they don't want to do it anymore. It's like, I'll go see you if I want to. See a classic act that even if like you said, like Doc may not sound like he did, but if they're out there and you still want to see me hear those songs, I think I'm all for it.
And the thing is that really the choice is with the consumer. And so if you're somebody that thinks, hey, it is just not worth it, it is not good, they're not living up to their legacy, then that's buyer's choice. You don't have to go. And if you go, then you know what you're getting. It's similar to when a band only has one or members.
Good point.
You know what you're getting.
Right.
And if you want to go, ultimately it's about the fun and the memories and the songs.
Exactly.
Having a good time.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I want to wrap it up there. I want to thank both of my guests for coming and talking to us about all this. Hopefully we got a better idea of each other's backgrounds and I like to say origin stories with the genre. Mark, Robert, thank you for joining me and talking. And of course, for you guys out in the audience, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And tell us what you think. Who have you seen that's been really good? What do you think about these 80-year-olds running around jamming their heavy metal their heavy metal songs? Let us know. So until next time, stay away from the political channels. Listen to more music. Take in some more shows.
That's right.
And trust me, you'll thank me later. Take care.